Okay, this is gonna be a rant one. I'm gonna talk about Xbox. This kind of everything going around about the sales for the holidays here, their lack of Black Friday sales and stuff like that. Um, I normally do this kind of thing on my podcast. I don't normally make videos about it, but ranting about how I think we have basically no real representation in video game media that isn't just trying to clickbait at this point. Well, here's one example of many. So we have this Gizmodo article by Kyle Barr. Says, "Yep, Xbox is bleeding out." Just these headlines that have gone from being like informative to just being like conversational, like engagement bait are one annoying thing. But what this article, I'll sum it up now, is basically referencing is the fact that Circana put out this report that talked about the top selling devices on Black Friday or of the holiday season for gaming. So Nintendo, the Switch 2, PlayStation 5, obviously kind of led the ranks there. And then there was this weird Nex device, which is this like $250 kind of vaporware box that you can get on Amazon. It seems like it has kind of a viral, likely purposeful marketing campaign. And it's kind of like a Connect, basically, if you remember the old Xbox device. It has no controllers. You just play these, I assume Android games in this device, and it's kind of hidden. And the story has become, oh, Xbox got beat by this random device, right? So I'm just going to go through this article real quick and point out some of the things that um, I have an issue with, and we'll talk about a few other things as well. So we start going through here. Um, it's just this opening line, like the worst sort of father. Xbox doesn't show much care for its youngest consoles anymore. Like, I just there is a deep desire to find any reason to say bad things about Xbox. I talked about this not too long ago and how over the last 20-25 years, basically as long as Google has records of like analytics, Xbox has gets more clicks as a search term than PlayStation or Nintendo ever have, and it's like doubled, and this has been consistent for like 20 plus years. There have been moments, if you go back and if you look at the analytics stuff, where obviously, like I assume when the Switch got announced, when the PlayStation 4 got announced, like there's been moments where Xbox has been taken over by the other brands, but consistently over the last 20 plus years, click wise, Xbox is just gold. And we're seeing that especially in the last couple years as people have figured out, oh, hey, if we always push negative stories, there's enough of an audience that loves that it can try to save our dying industry, which is the games media industry. So this goes into the Matt Piscatella. He's the Circana guy who talked about how PlayStation 5 accounted for 47% of Black Friday hardware sales. That's because people said they deeply discounted it. They actually just returned it to pre-tariff prices, but we'll get past that. Switch 2 ranked second at 24%, and this next playground was in third at 14%. And basically, Xbox wasn't on the table here. What I'll say is I think Nintendo Switch 2 only being 24% of the sales is insane with the clip that's been selling that, but that's a different story, different video likely. And so this goes into the next thing. It talks about it, how Xbox is missing. Um, we'll get into the details here. I have another person who I think has some really good takes on these things. But you have some of these kind of strange comments, like this one right here. Xbox either did not think it was necessary to push sales, or the brand just doesn't care anymore. Like there's other possibilities, and there's other possibilities that are way more likely than this one, which we'll get to. And so one thing I've talked about a lot when I rant about this stuff is I don't blame people for being down on Xbox. They've been doing some weird stuff, some things that are very outside the norm. They aren't just trying to copy PlayStation's strategy anymore. They're trying other things. Whether they'll work or not, I have no idea. But it almost seems like a lot of these journalists and stuff just refuse to acknowledge that Xbox maybe just doesn't want to continue failing their strategy that hasn't worked for the last 25 years, and instead are trying something different, because that's the only thing that makes sense for them at this point. Um, what I keep saying is that it's the lack of curiosity that I think drives me the craziest. It's like this should have you know just the idea that Xbox as a whole, as some organism, just was like, oh, I guess we shouldn't sell anything this season. Like that doesn't make sense. Like just purely logically, there has to be more. But we'll get to that. Now, this thing here, Xbox's whole strategy is now focused on software. That's not true. Like that is objectively false. In fact, they are pushing hardware more than ever. They just aren't pushing their own box more than ever. They're pushing PC. They're pushing, partnered handhelds. They're pushing PC. They're pushing, hell, they're even selling some of their stuff on PlayStation, right? And so this idea that they're only software focused makes no sense, especially with another report we'll talk about where they're obviously pushing forward with plans for a next gen console. Now, I will say this is where the article actually starts to get into some, truth, even though it's kind of accidental. There's this whole idea here of they're not shipping many consoles. They likely aren't producing many consoles at this point, if any, to be honest, which led to a story not over the summer of Costco and other companies either removing them from their floor space or from their websites. Now, again, this is like this. I call this concern trolling, where you have these journalists who I think pretty obviously have an agenda to push. But they act like it's just this tragedy. Instead of actually talking about what's going on, why it's happening, all of that, it turns into this, oh, well, these disappointing for Xbox fan, and this gets into this part where it starts talking about how hardware prices are raising so much and how that's going to be probably kind of a nightmare here in the next 5-10 years for gaming consoles of any ilk, of PlayStation, Nintendo, Xbox, whoever. Now there is an issue here of the reliable leaker Moore's Law is dead. Moore's Law is dead is likely one of the least accurate quote unquote leakers in the industry, especially at this point. There was a moment where they were probably pretty reliable, but they've very obviously just gone for the clicks for their YouTube channel. Maybe that's a personal opinion. You can fact check it if you want. But it's a story about how RAM, random access memory for computers, is insanely expensive right now. And just in the last few months, it's gone up like 3, 4, 5 times in price. And so they have this funny thing here where this journalist says Sony stockpiled enough memory for the short term, which sounds like it's true. That is a story that happened, but it ignores the fact that the first company that put out these concerns and likely stockpiled themselves for likely other purposes was Microsoft. And they were one of the first ones to put out there like, hey, with all these data centers and all this AI stuff, it sure looks like RAM and memory and storage is going to be a bit crazy. But moving on, this goes into talking about my cloud and how Microsoft recently said it was like a 50% jump in cloud usage, but didn't give any actual numbers. Yeah, I mean, who knows? I don't really care about that. It's just like here, like when the next gen Xbox does arrive, it won't be a battle directly with Sony's PS6. The console wars will have changed by then, with more players fighting for a living room than ever. The console wars haven't existed, at least for this entire generation and likely into the last one. As it seems obvious, I think, to anyone actually paying attention, that Xbox just hasn't been playing this game for a while. And let's move on. Let's get into this. So here I have Game Over 30 at Game Over 30 on Twitter, Rally Car Delta Gaming. I really appreciate this dude's insights. He does a really good job of kind of presenting just why things are actually happening instead of just doing engagement bait, clickbait stuff. And so I'll try to quickly read through it here. So if Microsoft was truly interested in selling you an Xbox Series unit, or they had a bunch of inventory piling up, they would swallow most of the costs and just put them out there for cheap. Even someone with a modicum of supply and demand understanding knows that you dump inventory by cutting price and just taking the loss. So why not? Because Microsoft and their other retailers purposefully or have purposely have no inventory or very little to sell. It doesn't exist. There's no reason for a retailer to run a fire sale on Xbox Series units because Microsoft isn't doing anything to produce the units. The supposed deal with Foxconn to build hardware out of Vietnam could mean anything, any number of things, especially Microsoft is aggressive about moving to new hardware. We don't know exactly what this means. We just have to wait. So it's just kind of pointing out that the reason that especially PlayStation had such significant sales and reductions in prices is because they probably have a bunch of units just sitting in storage. And one thing people don't often consider is that one of the most expensive things for a hardware business is storage. When you have millions of units taking up space in warehouses, you have to pay for that space. So you don't want that to happen. You want to move those units, even if it means selling at zero margin or even at a loss. And one thing that people forget is that even in the best of times, the PlayStation 5 is an example. After a revision early in the PlayStation 5's life, they kind of bragged. There was this big, I remember all these articles about like, oh, the PlayStation 5 is making money per unit. And I think people maybe misunderstood that. That probably meant it was making like a few dollars a unit. Hardware doesn't make money very often. It's the software that you buy with that hardware that people care about. Now, talking about the Vietnam thing, we have this article here from Windows Central, where Microsoft is reportedly partnering with Foxconn to expand Xbox manufacturing by 4.8 million devices per year as the Grand Theft Auto 6 looms. And you got to throw in that SEO topic there. Long story short, what this article is about is that in Vietnam, which has been pretty tariff proof for the most part, as opposed to China, this Foxconn, who makes like everyone's hardware for any kind of electric hardware, I believe at one point at least, like Apple devices, I believe Samsung, and now presumably Xbox, they are making a deal to expand a factory in Vietnam that will make around 5 million hardware devices per year. This is presumably for the next Xbox hardware, and it's just it's I think it's very signaling. It's showing, one, Xbox still does want to sell hardware. Two, they're very likely trying to do this like quickly. Like this is, I think, may mean that the next Xbox hardware is out as soon as 2026, more than likely 2027. And that, especially with all of the geopolitical stuff happening, things with tariffs, hardware prices and things like that, they just may not see the value in pumping a bunch of money into making the series consoles at this point when, probably most of the people who are going to buy one already have one, the 30 to 40 million people. And it kind of doesn't make sense for them to take some big losses on hardware that's likely going out the door. This was supplemented here by Jason Ronald, who's the head of hardware at Xbox, basically hyping up 2026. If you don't know, 2026 is the 25th anniversary of Xbox. Right now, we have the impression that we are going to have the Halo remaster or Halo remake game of the original. We're going to have a new Fable game. We're going to have a new Gears of War game. We're probably going to have a new Forza game. And there's a litany of other games that could be coming too. It seems the general consensus at this point is that by then, between now and then, now in 2026, we're going to get the announcement of new Xbox hardware. And I still hold on to the idea that we very well may get a hardware release for next holiday. I think it's the thing that makes the most sense. It may not be the most clickable theory in the world, but it's the thing that makes the most sense to me. So just going back even to this original article that's kind of sparked off this rant that's going to get like 20 views because it's not a Mass Effect video, and that's fine. I just wanted to get this out, and I wanted to put out some kind of video. I just really, really wish there was just maybe just a little more curiosity. I wish there was just like this article could make its point. If say this person doesn't like Xbox, or all these outlets seem to have some kind of quota of how many negative Xbox articles you have to make a week because it's probably the best the best click throughs they get. Like you can still put information in here that like explains what's going on, that asks questions, that hell, maybe speak to someone at Xbox, maybe get an interview, maybe do some original reporting, instead of just taking a bunch of other people's reports, which are themselves just taking a bunch of other people's reports and doing this like third and fourth hand reporting like this. But just you do it because you know the headline. Yep, Xbox is bleeding out. This, this like Marvel language, like ho hum, oh irony bait, because you know it's gonna work. I don't have an issue, and I actually appreciate people being somewhat pessimistic about Xbox or being annoyed by it, even though I think a lot of it's very sensationalized and kind of created. My issue really just comes down to, we can do better than this. There can be better reporting than this, and I think it's gonna be really interesting here in 10 or 15 years if we see this shift that Xbox is doing actually was probably the right idea for them, no matter how it works out. And I almost certainly think that PlayStation is going to follow in their footsteps. They're already starting to, but Nintendo will probably just make a 3 generation old piece of hardware and sell Mario on it for the next 100 years, and they'll end up surviving longer than Sony or Microsoft at this point. So we'll have to wait and see. That's all I have. That's my rant. Please subscribe to the channel. Leave a comment. Let me know what you think if I'm just being a console war Xbot baby. Hit the like button so more people see the video. Look at the links in the description of the video for other content I make, as well as other ways to support what I'm doing. Become a YouTube member if you want videos a bit early. That's all I've got for this one. So until next time.